Yeah, actually, I wasn't the only comedian at Birthday
That performed.
4. In fact, yeah, there was Hishamuddin Rice was there, if you consider, but most people know him as an activist first and not really. He was more like an activist who dabbled in comedy in a way, yes. But he was at every birthday, like, basically. And but yeah, it was interesting. Yes, so the story, this is actually related to that story. In 2015 and between 2015 to 2016, I did a lot of political comedy, and it wasn't a conscious decision. It's just that the way I write comedy is the same as the way I write everything. I just start with writing about things that upset me. And in 2015, just like most other people, the thing that upset me the most was Najib. So that's what I wrote about a lot back then. Um, and I hated him up to probably a personal level. I hated everything about him. I hated like his pink lips and his raccoon mustache and his badger eyebrows and the way he was put on a pedestal by everyone. So I guess at the time when he was caught red-handed with like the 2.6 billion ringgit in his M-Bank account, I was actually rejoicing a little bit because, like, although it was sad that like public money had been stolen, but at the same time, as a Malaysian, I have been so used to the cronyism and the corruption. Like, I always assume that public money is being stolen all the time anyway. So in a way, I had already accounted for it. So I kind of rejoiced, and I felt vindicated, because like after years of rooting for the underdog and voting for the underdog and counting votes for the underdog that had not a snowball chance in hell of ever winning. Like, for the first time, I felt like this. All of a sudden, there's hope for change. So and this hope started finding its way into my comedy as well, and I was like doing a lot of jokes about the situation at that time. And there was this one open mic show where I performed, and there was this girl who was really tickled by my performance, and she's like, "Oh, that was really funny." And her name, she introduced herself as Sharania, and she said like, "Oh, that was really funny. I gotta get my mom to watch you." And I had no idea what she was talking about. So I just said like, and she asked like, "When is your next performance?" I said, "Oh, the next one will be the next open mic, which is actually tomorrow at the Crack House Comedy Club." So like, I didn't really think anything about it. I was just happy that somebody was happy with my performance. And then at the next night, Dato Ambiga showed up, and then I put two and two. I performed, and she enjoyed the show. I did exactly the same performance, and she enjoyed the show. She had good laughs, and then I went to speak to her, and I said like, so your daughter is Sharania, and she's like, Sharania, you mean Sharania? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, Sharania. And she was like, yes, that is my daughter. And so like, okay, I put two and two together. And I think that opened up some opportunity for me. And a little bit later, I actually performed at the birthday rally. I was invited to perform at the birthday rally. And it was actually birthday 4. And it was actually the first time I was going to a birthday rally in Kuala Lumpur. In birthday 3, we kind of did kind of a cheat rally because we were out of Kuala Lumpur. We were in Churating having a family holiday. So we just held up a sign, took some photos, and that was our birthday 3 rally. But birthday 4 was my real first real street rally experience. And my friends were kind of like telling me, like some of them who had been to other birthday rallies, they were telling me stories like, be prepared that the police is going to crack down, and like you're gonna experience tear gas, and you're gonna have to get ready for it and run away by like 5 o'clock. So I was like kind of like preparing that there might not even be a performance, because I was supposed to perform at like 8:30 or something like that. So and then I also had like some friends and family members, mostly boomers, who were telling me like, don't go to birthday 4, it doesn't do anything. We have had 3 birthdays already. The government's still the same. It hasn't changed the government. If you really wanna do, the street rallies don't do anything. Going to birthday to take selfies doesn't change anything. So if you really want to do something, you have to like really do it like Occupy Wall Street, or do it like the umbrella movement in Hong Kong. Just go there and sit there and don't move until you get your demands met, right? You gotta really be strong like that. And so I was like, okay, never mind, I'm still going. And then a few days before the rally, there was actually some students holding this event called Occupy Parliament. So I was telling my friends who were saying that, like, you said like we should do, Occupy Wall Street. Now we have Occupy Parliament. You should go join them. Of course, they didn't. They actually ended up going to Birthday 4 to take selfies, just like I did. So that was that. And then it was an interesting experience. I was performing from the back of like this pickup truck, and then the speakers were actually pointing sideways. So I was performing to the crowd in front of me, and they were squinting. They couldn't really hear what was going on. And then I could hear laughter coming from the side, So only the people like on the sides were able to hear what I was saying. So it was an interesting experience, and I was glad that I got to do it. And then as time went by, I think I started feeling like I'm not sure if actually comedy can actually affect any change. I'm not sure about that, And then in 2017, in January of 2017, Donald Trump became the president. And at the time, everyone was shocked, right? Everyone was like, how can somebody who says all these misogynistic, racist things be the president of the free world? But he was, And so it was kind of like, and then I was watching all the comedy talk shows, and they were all kind of like poking fun of all the daily stupid things that he would say. But I felt like, at the time, they weren't really changing anybody's minds. So I felt like it's like one of those movies where the enemy is like this big monster, is like a blob, and the army shoots missiles and lasers into the blob, and it only makes it stronger. It kind of felt a little bit like that, like the comedy that was directed at Donald Trump was only making him stronger among his supporters. So I started feeling like maybe you can't really change people's minds with sarcasm. So I was like, I started drifting a little bit away from it, which was kind of awkward, because sometimes, my comedy had to do with a lot of more person. It was it wasn't very political anymore after a while, which was kind of awkward, because sometimes the host would still introduce me as the comedian who performed at Birthday, and then I would go up on stage and I would be like, so you know what I hate about strawberry jam? And then, the crowd would be like, what? Don't know what to make of it. They're like, what is going on? When's he going to start getting political? So that's something else I have to deal with. But at that time I was thinking, I was thinking like, well, if we can't really change people's minds with like sarcasm, with like irony, then what do we do, right? And I find like we are always blaming the government a lot, right? And rightfully so, because the government do need us to keep them in check. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of times we absolve our responsibilities, and I'm guilty of that as well. When we talk about people are racist, it's like, it's the government's fault, because the government is always pitting people against each other. And that's true. But if you look at it that way, then like, well, they're not going to change because it's in their interest not to change, right? So like, how can we change them? And I think I thought about this for a long time, you know, and I'm kind of deviating from the story a bit, but yeah. So okay. In 2018, we managed to change the government, and then 2 years later, the government changed back, right? So in a way, I felt like it was like, okay, maybe we are not really as ready for change as we thought. You know, we could complain that, oh, this is not fair, it's the backdoor government, and I do feel that as well. But at the same time, it's like they do have at least a certain percentage of the mandate of the people, otherwise they wouldn't dare try it, right? So I always feel like maybe we have to change. We have to look within ourselves for racism, and so I think like even like sometimes when I feel like, oh no, I don't have to, you know, I'm not a racist, right? And then when I actually look at myself more closely, I do have a lot of prejudice sometimes. Like I'll give you an example. Like when this is back in the days when we were going out to the shops, right? Back in the good old days in the before the MCO. And when I was going to the shop, sometimes I would get shortchanged. And if the person who shortchanged me is non-Chinese, I would be very forgiving. I would be like, oh, he just made a genuine mistake. But then if the person is Chinese, I would be like, bugger, this guy tried to cheat me. So, you know, that prejudice comes from somewhere, right? Comes from your very biased expectations. So I'm like, okay, if I look deep inside myself, I do find a lot of prejudice as well in a lot of situations. So I thought like, okay, just move forward to February of this year, like late February, when we weren't sure like who was going to be the PM. Was it going to be Dr. Mahathir? Was it going to be Anwar? Was it going to be Muhyiddin? We weren't sure, right? And up to that weekend before Monday, that time, it was late February, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm so sick of all the uncertainty. So I wrote something on Facebook to talk about looking for racism within yourself, like being self-reflective, looking within yourself to change yourself. Don't bother policing other people's racism, because what happens is you try to say, like, when you try to talk about racism, what always happens is like people will be they'll get into this whataboutism, you know. It's kind of like, oh, you're talking about this, what about that, you know, what about your people, what about this thing? So I'm like, okay, forget about all that, just look within yourselves. Don't even bother policing other people's racism, because like you're just going to cause a lot of friction, right? So that was the whole gist of this post I posted on Facebook, and it was shared like 80 times or 80 something times, not exactly viral, but it was shared a bunch of times, and I was pretty happy that the message got out a little bit. And then I read the comments section, and in the comment section was just people who agreed with me, but they agreed in such a way, they're like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Those people need to change. So I'm like, oh, you guys are missing the message. So I guess in a way it's hard to get people to change, but I am still hopeful. And sorry that this is supposed to be storytelling, but I got a little preachy towards the end. But I'm still hopeful. I'm gonna change myself, and the message is still don't bother so much with other people. Just we all improve ourselves, and that's how we're gonna make the world a better place. Okay, that's the end of my story. Thanks, Simon.